Hello everyone, today we're gonna learn how to feather. If you ever wondered what's feathering and how to do it, today is your lucky day. Welcome. So what's feathering? Well, feathering, some people call it a way to blend, and I will agree to a certain extent. What I mean is that feathering is very good as a secondary blending tool. As in, you can use it after a glaze, or after a layer, or after a base coat even, to achieve a smoother blend than you would with the previously applied technique. What I mean is that if you're base coating and then you try to feather a base coat, you will get a decent blend, but not very fantastic one. If you're layering, then it's better, and if you're glazing, it's even better. I'll show you. So I base coated these little thing. You can see it's still wet. I base coated this with a blue. Okay, so let's say I now want to get this blue to blend with the black, and I'm using a base coat consistency paint. I can just slap it down like this, but it's still gonna create a transition layer here, right? And I don't want that. So how do I fix it? I lick the brush. There are other ways around it, I'll explain. And then with a gentle movement, a zigzag movement, I keep cleaning the brush on my tongue, and I keep doing zigzag movements to get the paint to expand a little bit, but also my saliva is diluting it. And this is gonna help with the blend, but then again, this is a base coat, so it's not really gonna blend perfectly. You can move this around as much as you want, try to get it to look nice before it dries, and of course, if it dries, you never wanna touch it, as it is on the verge of drying, otherwise you're gonna get the paint off. You can work with paint only when it's still on a wet state. If you notice that it's drying, like it is here, for example, if you touch it too much, it's gonna come off. You don't want that. So let's say we did it with a base coat. Let's try again with a layer this time. So we have our layer here. Gonna slap it down. And I don't care about coverage in this part. I just want to show you the separation line between the two. I lick the brush and then very gently expand the paint, move it around. Again, it needs to be kind of a quick movement. You don't want this to drag on for too long, otherwise you're gonna get paint off of the model. It needs to be a very quick zigzag movement of the brush on the separation line. I'll show it again, trying to explain what goes through my mind as I do it. So I have a line of paint here. I want to clean the brush and then zigzag. The reason why I'm zigzagging is because I'm kind of redistributing the pigments of the previous layer in a kind of a random way, while also diluting them thanks to my saliva. And also, since they are diluted, I am dragging them away from the area I've coated, making so that they cover more, so you have a bigger area of coverage, but at the same time its surroundings are more well blended, which means that after that you can clean it up with a glaze and be kind of done. So what is the point of feathering? Again, as I said, it is a secondary technique to apply when you are using other techniques, which means that in this case I base coated or layered this color here, and now in an attempt to blend it with the previous color, I am cleaning the brush on my tongue. So Vince Venturella calls it void blending, somebody call it spit blending, you can call it alpaca blending or BBD blending if you want. Doesn't really matter. It just means that you are cleaning the brush on your tongue, so you don't have as much paint as you did before, and also your saliva on your tongue is gonna get the brush slightly wetter, and doing that allows you to basically dilute the paint on the model rather than on the palette. Which also means that as you are diluting the paint in a more controlled way, because on the palette you're usually diluting the little drop of paint, while on the model you're just diluting the edges of it, which means you're not gonna have to spit on the brush or something. Just gently scrape it across the top of your tongue. Like, I don't want to show you, but I think you can understand. And just to clean the paint excess, and like this, and then move it around on the separation line This paint here doesn't want to dry because it's a monument paint, and monument paint are really good paints for this specific technique, and also wet blending. They're not the only good paints, also Reaper is very, very good as a brand. Which brings us to the next subject, which is paint consistency / tracing. I'm not going to go far into explaining what's tracing. All I'm going to say is that there are brands of paints which are better than others at doing certain things. For example, Vallejo is really good at base coating and it's really good at glazing, but I don't personally like to wet blend with it. The pigments don't look like they interact too well on the model. At the same time, GW is very good at base coating, and all the other things after that, like pastel layering, like wet blending, glazing, and especially feathering, are kind of difficult to do because the paints are very, very thick, at least the base coat paints. Monument and Reaper are both very, very fluid and very, very pigment rich, which means that those paints will usually take a little bit longer than others to dry. And also, having more pigments means that it's easier to blend it. As you can tell, like, it's drying here, and I'm getting a nicer blend than I have here. See? This is because the paint has a good tracing and allowed me to drag it across the base without, you know, leaving weird brush marks or anything. If I did it with a GW paint, I would have had to be much more careful with it because there was a huge risk of leaving big stains or clumps of pigments that would then create little ridges in the model and stuff like that. It's very difficult to explain in a single video all of these things, so if you want to, I can make another one talking about the difference between brands and what's tracing and how to understand what brand is good at what. But for today, we're just talking about feathering. Then again, I'm going to repeat it for a third time, I think. Feathering is when you use it, when you move in a zigzag way to blend a color into another without actually doing the effort of applying a blending technique on it, which means I am base coating this highlight. Let's say this is an highlight. Actually, let's get an highlight down. I have this color here. Why not use it? So I have this highlight here, and I'm highlighting my, I don't know, Space Marine, my Ultramarine, my something. And now I notice that the highlight is gonna dry in a very stark line to separate the two colors. And I don't like that because if that dries, it means that I'm gonna have to work a lot in blending the two colors after with glazes or wet blending or redo the layer or whatever. So what I'm gonna do next, instead of letting it dry, is clean the brush, move it gently across the separation line between the two colors. See? Just zigzag movements, dragging the brush away from the layer I just placed. Clean it again if you want and redo it until you're happy. But just keep in mind that you don't want the paint to dry on you, so you can't do this forever. You're not gonna get the perfect blend out of this in most cases, but what you're gonna do is simplify your blending process after. Because when these dry, it's not gonna leave a stark separation line between these two colors like it did here, but it's gonna create a more soft blend between the two colors, which means that after you can just use a glaze of whichever of the two colors. I would use the darker blue and just clean up the blend here without having to waste, I don't know, 20 minutes on it. You can just waste a couple of layers, and all it took you is just simply licking the brush once and just scraping it across the surface. Not aggressively, like you're not actively scraping the brush against the surface. You're just gently caressing it and moving it across, having a slightly damp brush, moving it across like this. You're expanding the paint. And again, as I said earlier, there are many different brands of paints. You need to find the ones you like the most for this technique. When a painter chooses a brand to use and chooses colors, it's usually about the quality of the colors and the quality of the pigments. All brands have their own strengths and weaknesses. Feathering, in my personal opinion, gets really easy with some brands, such as Reaper and Monument, and it gets very difficult with others, such as GW. You see that GW painters usually layer. You don't see them glaze or wet blend very often. People who very heavily use GW are usually into layering a lot, while people who are into, I don't know, Reaper or Monument, they like wet blending a lot. The reason is because they are working with the strength of the paints they're using. So keep that in mind as a side tip. Keep that in mind next time you paint. Think about the brand you're using, think about the strength the paint has, and try to achieve a good result using the strength of it. Because if you're fighting the paint while you're painting a model, it's going to be difficult. Again, feathering with HW paint is definitely possible. I've done it many times, but still it gets harder than using other brands. And then you can ask yourself, is it worth to use GW on this model? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then probably I shouldn't try to feather or wet blend. Probably I should do something else. Or use instruments that allow you to transform those paints in a more usable paint for those techniques, such as retardant mediums, flow improvers, or many other things. I don't use any of those. Like, honestly, I just use distilled water for my paints. I never use any kind of medium or anything, but there are people who have a lot of success in painting that use those, so maybe look into those as well. So yeah, I think I said everything I wanted to say about this subject. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. Again, keep in mind, feathering is when you move the brush very gently in a zigzag way with a clean, damp brush after you've just placed a layer, a glaze, a base coat, whatever you want to call it, of a paint or another, in order to allow a better transition with techniques you're going to use after, so glazing usually. You want to base coat and then base coat the highlight on top, and then feather the highlight and then glaze it to smooth it out. And it's going to be usually much faster than just simply layering the highlight or base coating the highlight and then just glazing. I'll show you a couple of models. This guy is a guy I'm extensively using feathering on because he's a big guy, and feathering really works well when you have big volumes you're working on, because feathering, I don't know, on this little skull here would be much more difficult than feathering on top of the shoulder pad. And this blend here that you can see goes from a very dark blue to a very bright blue, was done mostly in not very long time thanks to feathering, because I could feather the highlights every time I placed it, so that it would allow me for a better, faster, smoother blend after using lasers. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I stream 5 days a week, 8 hours a day on Twitch, so please come follow me there. I would love to meet you there. And if you have friends who are into painting, please share this video or any other video from my channel you like, because it does really help with the growth. I'm a new channel. Painting is a very niche thing, and as you can imagine, it's difficult to find people to, to subscribe or just simply watch. So please help out if you can. Thank you so much. I hope to see you on Twitch. We do giveaways there. We do everything. Like, literally, we spend a lot of time. We have fun. We laugh. You should come. You should really come and check out. All right? Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the guide. Again, if you have any questions about feathering, the way I explained it, if something isn't clear, feel free to drop a comment or come on Twitch, and I'll do my best to help you out. And I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic night. Bye-bye.